What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at Occupy Fantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I am your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. I'm the co-founder and data guru here at OccupyFantasy.com. Alongside with Brian, at Brian Jester FF on Twitter is where you can find him. He's the co-founder and CEO of Occupy Fantasy. How's it going, Brian?
What's up, Moose? Happy Saturday. No UFC tonight, so we're just chilling and doing NFL prep. And I know we got a lot of people watching live last week, so I figured we'd do another NFL After Dark show.
Definitely. And it's getting close to my bedtime because I'm one of the degenerates getting up at 4:30 in the morning, making sure my DFS lineups are okay, making sure there's no like terrible starting nine or anything like that for the World Cup. Uh, yeah, we but got to squeeze some NFL in there always. And the one point I wanted to make with at least with the World Cup DFS, and this can be applied to literally anything else in life, is not many people are getting up at 4:30 a.m., 1:30 Pacific time or whatnot. So if there
Nope.
is a change and you're up for that, just to show again how important information is, or even just being there for lock, that if something changes, my biggest win, granted it was only like $30, like 30x, was from a game where the starting nine was announced. It was deviated, so I moved off a person who was super low owned and got me the 3 points I needed to get me in second place.
Yeah, man. Reminds you of the KBO middle of the night League of Legends days, that's for sure. So shout out to you. And yeah, grinding, especially the niche sports like that, it's super helpful.
Yeah, the only way to stay awake is you got to listen to the Spanish broadcast because they are louder than a mug. Then
They will keep you awake. If you
yeah,
listen to that versus the English broadcast, yeah, you'll definitely stay awake for the entirety of the game.
definitely. So let's jump into NFL Week 12 DFS. We're here for 30 or so minutes or so. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask. We're gonna break down a slate, talk about some top stacks, some top plays, low owned plays, some underperforming wide receivers, and little anything in between. So I'll start off, Brian, from a very high level slate. We have some very cheap running backs, both on DraftKings and FanDuel. I don't think we can pay up for. I don't think there's a week you pay up for running back, but yeah, let's just talk about that. I think it's four cheap running backs that we have in situations this week.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy because we have, let me see here. I'm looking at our model and looking at the latest ownership projections, and we have four guys over 20%, and a handful of guys over 10%. Really, it is the week of the cheap, underpriced running back whose teammates are either cut, injured, benched, or whatever it is. So starting from the top, we have Jeff Wilson of the Dolphins, who was starting to take a hold of the backfield anyways when he was acquired via trade just a few weeks ago. But Raheem Mostert's all but out this week, which means we get a ton of Jeff Wilson against the Texans, who, as Chris pointed out in the play, one of the worst rush defenses in the league,
Mm-hmm.
as 15-point favorites. He's only 5,900 DraftKings. It's 7,700 on FanDuel. FanDuel extremely sharp with that pricing somehow. So not nearly as highly on there. We have Rashad White, who we've been kind of itching to play, even in Showdown all year. He's 5,100 DraftKings, 6,400 on FanDuel. No Leonard Fournette. And again, just really quickly, I'm going to say these guys and maybe a reason why they might fail, right? So
Okay.
Jeff Wilson, massive favorite if it's a blowout. Beat writers already said Myles Gaskin will get extra touches, and extra means more than zero, which is what he's been getting. So maybe second half it's a blowout. Wilson doesn't get as many touches. Rashad White, they still have Keyshawn Vaughn. They activated Gio Bernard off injured reserve. It's not like Gio was playing a ton when he was in there anyways, but maybe this isn't the full workload for White. It probably is. We have Samaje Perine, who just trolled everybody and scored 3 touchdowns last week with Mixon out. He's the biggest one to be concerned about because Chris Evans is back, and Chris Evans is known as a big pass catcher. They've always wanted to work Chris Evans in more. They do have Travion Williams as well. P. Ryan, as Chris pointed out, I think in the video, which if you haven't watched yet, make sure you go check it out. Chris's video here on the YouTube channel, where P. Ryan played the most snaps he's ever played last week,
Yeah.
and it was kind of out of necessity because Vixen got hurt early and Evans was inactive. So there's some concern for P. Ryan's workload, and most of we also have Latavius Murray, who's going to be popular and should be because Melvin Gordon is cut. Chase Evans is on IR. The only guys they have behind him are Marlon Mack and Divine Ozigbo. But then we have guys, Moose, that are lower owned that still have backfield mates missing that could break the slate. You have Isaiah Pacheco with no Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're 17-point favorites. You got Antonio Gibson, 5,400 on DraftKings. Took over a lead role last week. David Montgomery, no Khalil Herbert still. So lots of guys that can break the slate. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, and again, so many options. It's very, very easy to galaxy brain it. Maybe you go with some of the more expensive guys. Maybe you do some other stuff. It's not very tough. I think just play these guys, rotate them around your lineup. Even if you're 3 maxing all the way up to 150 maxing, I think you just heavily, heavily, heavily rotate these guys in your lineup. Brian, the only one I'll say, the one I could probably fail the most, you pointed out you're most concerned about, is Samaje Perine. Again, as a Bengals fan, I've been following the situation a lot. I don't like Perine this week. I know the model likes him. He's like 8th or 9th or something like that. But I'm too concerned with the other running back that I just don't think Perine's going to get enough snaps to get him there.
It's possible. It's possible. And I think this, so Lord King Brews in the chat, what's up, dude? He says, thinking about paying down at running back this week because of the value across the board and up at wide receiver. And yeah, I think that's what the field is going to do. But honestly, that's what we should be doing too, right? Like, if this was a week where we had 2 value running backs, 1 to 2 value running backs, and you say, okay, maybe they fail. Then you say, let's flip the line of construction. Let's pay up at running back, get those points. Now we're completely different from the field. But we have like 6 to 8 value running backs this week. So even if 2 or 4 or 6 fail, there's others that can replace those points. So the value of flipping the line of construction and paying up at running back this week is devalued because of the number of options we have in that lower price range. So guys like, I mean, if you look at the top of the price, let's just look at DraftKings, right? You have McCaffrey, Eckler, Henry, Chubb, Jacobs, Kamara. All these guys are 7K plus. There's no value in playing them because there are guys who are literally 2 to 3K cheaper that can match their ceilings, that can match their floors, which sounds crazy to think given the names I just rattled off. But it's the same on FanDuel as well. There are so many that you're not gaining much by paying those extra dollars.
Yeah, and even if they don't hit the absolute max ceiling, again, they can get priced out where, let's say McCaffrey scores 30, Jeff Wilson scores 28. That leaves you with the extra $2,000 in your lineup to spread around the other positions to get that extra 2-3 points.
Yes, exactly. So.
And also a big thing about the player, these cheap running backs this week, they're actually good. So I know that's a hard thing to, both times before, like, oh, this player's cheap running back. He hasn't really done much, but he's cheap. He's gonna be super high owned. Let's play him. But then these are actually good running backs. So I do love this week for running backs.
Yeah, like all high points per touch running backs. So we gotta like it.
Definitely. We got BSK in here. Says, thought on a Jacoby Brissett, Amari, and DBJ stack.
I'm not playing it this week. I've been on the Jacoby train a little bit, but that game in general doesn't look like a great environment. We expect Tampa to run the ball even more as they did right before the bye. And that game, I'm trying to find it here in my notes here, but the total has dropped in that game as well. And it's not like Jacoby Brissett puts up a ton of volume anyways. So I'm off it. I just think there are much better spots this week. The ones that Chris pointed out in the plug, and even a couple others that I think look really. Because again, I don't think there's a need to pay for a super cheap quarterback without a high ceiling this week. This slate is very unlike the past 2 slates, especially on DraftKings. Our pricing was really tight. We had to find value wherever we could, even if that meant playing a cheaper quarterback. We just don't need to do that this week.
Yep, exactly. You completely agree. Cool. So speaking of stacks, let's talk about the first stack, and then I see some questions. We'll answer some questions once we go over that first stack. Take a look at the Occupy Fantasy Daily Plug, available on our website. Scroll down to basically near the bottom. We see the stacks that Chris wrote. See the first stack of the week. No potential bring back are the Chargers against Arizona. Brian, talk to me about the Chargers.
They shock you, but I also like the Arizona side here. So it's nice because we have condensed target trees on both sides. This game popped for me. I know it popped for you as well, Moose. For me, it was by far my number 1 overall game environment for the week. Look at all the metrics that I look at. And so, yes, no Mike Williams, which means we have full-time Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, Gerald Everett. Boom, easy stacks. Arizona side is where it gets tricky because we got Rondale Moore, who's out. And if you played him in Showdown, RIP, after he got injured on the first play last week, Greg Dortch comes in and torches the defense. He's going to be out too, it sounds like. He didn't practice all week with a thumb injury. and they called up 2 receivers off the practice squad, which is basically an indication. One of which is Pharaoh Cooper, who would replicate at least on special teams because Greg Dortch returns punts and kicks,
Mhm.
and Pharaoh Cooper's a return specialist. So it all but says Greg Dortch is out too, which means we don't have that slot wide receiver to play from Arizona. And we got a question about this in the Discord earlier, and it's really tough to know exactly how it's going to pan out because Marquise Brown is coming back from injured reserve. He's supposed to be on a snap count. But Moose, I think D-Hop is the easy play on Arizona side, right? Kyler Murray's going to be back. We know they have that connection.
Mhm.
AJ Green is super cheap. He's going to run a shit ton of routes. And I know it's AJ Green and he's basically dead, right? And I understand it. But he's going to run a ton of routes out there. Brown is much cheaper on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel if you want to play him in stacks. And Robbie Anderson played a decent amount last week, even though he's just getting in some wind sprints. So there are definitely ways to stack this game, and with the value we have at running back, it's very easy to fit him.
Yeah, I see. Lord King Guru here says that's going to be his favorite game to stack, especially with Marquise Brown back. There's definitely a lot of options. I like Arizona more as a run back, but if you want to stack them, I don't hate it. It could be one of those things where you benefit from chaos, where people are going to stay away from this game because may not necessarily know what the entire outcome is going to be with so many missing pieces. Uh, you can go take advantage of that and go over leverage.
Yeah, because Arizona in general, like Kyler is 5% projected by us. D Hop is the only one, 17%. Every other Arizona receiver is projected for 1% or less.
Hmm.
So, especially if you're 150 maxing,
Yeah.
maybe 20 maxing, you mix in those other guys. Small field and single entry, it's a little bit tougher to click those names. I get it. So the Arizona secondary receivers is definitely more of a mass multi-entry play.
Yeah. And Lord King, we did not pay him to write this, but he says, "You guys are the best in my opinion." I appreciate that. And he says, P. Ryan, no. Tennessee not allowing many rushing yards, plus Cincinnati may be inclined to pass because of Tennessee's secondary. Definitely. I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, like we might not even want them to run the ball. Like we want P Ryan to get a bunch of receptions, right?
Hmm.
P Ryan's one of the better pass blocking, pass receiving backs. So if they're dropping back to pass a lot, we want them to check down to him 5, 6, 7 times. Much easier path to value than him running 20 times as
Yeah.
it is for any running back.
And you hope he gets the touchdown variance. Obviously, he's not going to get the 3 touchdown variance like he did
Yeah,
last
dude,
week,
he
but
used that shit up last week. I don't know if he's got any more left in the tank.
definitely. Cool. So, next stack we have on here is Vegas and Seattle, which kind of popped. Didn't really pop in the beginning of the week for me. Once I looked more some stuff, and then it started to pop up. Brian's a very interesting stack for me.
As always, we love targeting non-divisional games later in the season as more and more teams start to play each other for the second time within division. So this certainly qualifies. And again, it's come down to condensed target trees once again. Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller remain out, which means we have Devontae Adams, Mac Hollins, who is an underperforming wide receiver, Foster Moreau at tight end, easy. Seattle side, obviously just have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Very easy to 2-1 stack this game if you want. If you want a 3-by-1, I get it. Very easy game to stack. So you just hope that both teams' touchdown variance doesn't end up on the rushing side of things.
Hmm.
But again, with everything we have, there's really again most this is like earlier in the season where we really don't have an issue fitting what we want to fit in, and we just got to pray for a game environment to actually go off.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. You'll pick the right players, and you do well. Who knew it'd be so easy, right?
I will
BS,
say,
go
I
ahead.
will say most really quickly, this
Hmm.
is and honestly, to BSK's point, this is one of those weeks where you have to be careful if you're using either our lineup build or any optimizer, right? Whatever you use. Be careful not to let too many low-owned plays get into one lineup,
Hmm.
right? Like weeks like last week where it's more unpredictable with the pricing, especially on DraftKings, you can open it up more. But there's a lot of value that's hard to pass up this week at all positions. So if you end up with 5, 6, 7 guys under 10%, under 5%, probably a really bad lineup, and not even bad in the sense of that. Oh, this is different than everyone else, and it can win GPPs. I think you're leaving too much risk on the table there.
Yeah, exactly. I think especially with so much value open up, there's a lot of condensed chalk. That's good chalk in this state. So you might want to throw some of those pieces in just to balance it out.
Yep.
Definitely. Ed says I have negative 12% card for me this week, but skinny stack all day. I mean, if you can find out how to like short players in DFS, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'd be rich.
Definitely. And he says, "Am I wrong to think the differentiator this week is going to be wide receiver?" No, I mean that's pretty much what we've been talking about basically the whole stream with the cheap running backs.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Honestly, the differentiation is either going to be at wide receiver or it's going to be the cheaper running backs that people aren't playing as much. Pacheco,
Hmm.
e- Murray to an extent, Montgomery, Gibson, those guys.
Yep. Justin Kelly says Jacobs not going to play this week. I know he was questionable last time I looked.
Yeah, I didn't see an update today, and it's not like they have to give us an update because they have so many running backs on the active roster. They have Zamir White, Amir Abdullah, and Brandon Bolden, so it's not like they would have to call someone up. But what I read, it was a mid-practice downgrade, left practice early, which is never good for soft tissue, calf injury. The reporter in the article I read said he saw Jacobs in the locker room, no crutches or anything, no cast or whatever, but was limping. Jacobs was tough. I'm sure he'll play. But you have to question his effectiveness. Anytime you have a soft tissue injury late in the week, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, I think.
Hmm.
Anytime you see this late in the week, it's generally a red flag. And the
Yeah.
fact that he's one of the pricier running backs on the slate just makes it a very, very easy fade.
Yes, exactly. Um, BSK says, how did y'all do on the Thanksgiving slate? I don't know about you, Brian, but I played cash and missed the cash lineup by 1.5 points, which is
Ugh,
always tilting.
that sucks. I did really well on both sites, and I needed either one less touchdown to scoop all the tickets on DraftKings. It would have been like 10 to 15,000 tickets, or one more touchdown to be top five in the FanDuel Big GPP. Naturally, neither happened, and I lost everything on both sides. So I ended up breaking even for the slate. So again, I think we have a great grasp on those shorter slates, and it's something honestly I should be playing more of.
Yeah. Justin says he had the $1 million lineup in the mini max. That sucks. But I mean, honestly, we talked about it before, Brian. I think you can't really harp on that because if you weren't going to be mini max, if you're, I'm assuming he's maxing or doing multiple entries in the mini max. If you're not,
Right.
if part of your normal process isn't to max the milli maker, I mean,
Right.
yeah, it's not like, yeah, it sucks, but like don't put too much into it.
Like realistically, it never would have happened, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Ed says, if this is the first you've heard from me, it's because I was late. Why does Moose sound like he's on the phone asking for a ransom? It's because I'm at someone else's house and there's people like right there, like right over there, and I don't have my microphone, so I'm using my significant other's customer service job's headset. So it's
I
supposed
got
to
to
be,
say, it sounds pretty legit. It's clear quality.
yeah, it's way. I'm definitely might have to start stealing this now. Definitely. Cool. So, is that everything here? Yep. We'll talk about some of the next stacks. Not necessarily game stacks, but the sides. First one, Kansas City. Always very high explosive offense. One is recommended here in the plug. Anything on Kansas City, Brian?
Yeah, I think we can group these all together: Kansas
Okay.
City, Miami, Tampa Bay, and even Cincinnati, which is what I'm playing
Hmm.
because I just come around to the point where it's like I'm not missing out on Cincinnati spike weeks. This is not. I'm not going to do it. It's not going to happen anymore. So, plus they're going to pop most weeks, and now that we got Chase out Moose, there's really no uncertainty there. It's really the best case scenario. He doesn't come back too early, get re-injured, doesn't come back and only play limited snaps. Now we know we get full-time Higgins and Boyd this week. Next week we're back to full-time Chase and Higgins. Boom, easy, love that. And all these teams, right? There's not really a need for a run back on the other side, whether it's a massive spread like Kansas City and Miami,
Hmm.
or it's just a lack of true options in Cleveland. Well, Cleveland, if you want to stack Tampa Bay, that's fine. I'm not stacking it because Tom Brady's dust. But if you want to stack it, I get it. And running back with a Brown. But Cincinnati, again, you don't have to run it back. And again, Henry's too expensive based on everything else we know this week. So these teams was I think you can all 2-0, 3-0. I'm personally not playing Tampa Bay and Kansas City. Tampa Bay because of the Brady issue. Kansas City is just such a massive spread, and given the fact that which we haven't talked about yet is that there's so many teams with backup quarterbacks playing that they're just not, teams with regular ass quarterbacks can't even push the pace and keep game stacks alive, let alone a second or third string quarterback. So I'm not going to be playing it. I'll just play Pacheco and other various pieces from Kansas City.
Yeah, and so I was actually going to ask you about Kansas City with Pacheco. Um, are you including him in game stacks? And if you are, do you potentially mega stack that side with such a cheap running back?
Yeah, I think you can. Any of those cheap running backs, you can certainly mega stack, and I think it's similar with like Miami too. It's like Jeff Wilson, Pacheco, Rashad White. All these teams, honestly, all four of these teams, P Ryan, right?
Yeah.
Like you could play a 3-0 or even a 4-0, a receiver plus the cheap running back, and it's not a 3-by-1 stack we typically play, but because there's salary this week, we certainly can.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So, let's see. I was just trying to see if I had any notes about any of these teams. Not really, no. I was looking in the plug to see if there are any notes about that. No, not
Was
really.
Matt in the chat says Bengals are his favorite stack. No Chase. Burks is coming on. Pass funnel, no Mixon. Tennessee can keep up. Hope the field bypasses that game total. Yeah, I agree, dude. I totally agree. Burks is a great call for a run back there. You honestly don't have to run it back at all if you want.
Hmm.
But yeah, I love the Bengals this week as well.
Which is crazy because, again, no one should take this word, and if you're playing them, you should play them. For some reason, I'll end up playing them tomorrow, honestly, let's be honest. But for some reason, I can't bring myself to see. It just seems like there's too many missing pieces, where maybe
Well,
that means there's just more concentrated volume.
for
Uh,
Cincinnati,
yeah,
I
for Cincinnati.
honestly just do like a 2-0 or 3-0, I think.
Yeah,
And because here's the thing, Tennessee, there's enough random guys that are going to score, whether it's the tight ends or Woods or Hilliard. And Henry, if it's just Henry on that side and he puts up 20 or 30, that's still not enough based
yeah,
on the cheap running backs we have. So I'm more inclined to just look at this Cincinnati side there, play
makes
2-0 or 3-0.
makes sense to me. I will say to help me build the lineups is I will use the Occupy Fantasy Lineup Builder, which #ad. You can also read the free NFL Strategy Guide, a high-level strategy roadmap for how to build profitable NFL DFS lineups for FanDuel and DraftKings contests. Yeah, go ahead and check out the free strategy guide. We also have the lineup builder that is not free. It's part of our subscription. Uh, Brian will probably bring it back next week where we will do some more like just show off how to use the builder with certain stacks this week. But any rules or anything that you would bring for the lineup builder this week? I know you mentioned like Cincinnati 2-0, no bring backs or anything like that. Any rules you think you would add to the builder this week?
Yeah, real quick, let's go back to that strategy guide ad. Those three pictures. Shout out to Derek, our social media guy. Those three pictures were all three great times. Right,
Yes.
two live finals in a Vegas Millie Sweat. You can't get much better than that. Good picture choice from Derek there. So #ad, use the lineup builder and go to live finals. All right, so for rules this week, I think the biggest one, Moose, I'm going back to is that ownership one.
Mm-hmm.
Right, there's so much value again, especially DraftKings. FanDuel shockingly has been sharper this year with the pricing, but DraftKings especially, you want to make sure that you're setting ownership rules where you at least have one or two lower owned guys in there, because it's very easy if you're not paying attention to just build lineups that have all chalk, right? Which
Yeah.
have done well this year, but there's normally at least one or two pieces of differentiation. But on that complete opposite end of the spectrum, if you're not paying attention, you're building 20, 150, 300 lineups, you'll end up with some lineups, again, barbell, where you have some that are too chalky and some that have like 7 low owned guys, which is just too much on a slate like this.
Yeah.
So make sure you set rules, max, min, guys under 10%, 15, 5%, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me here. One thing we haven't talked about are the underperforming wide receivers, which there's only, I think, 3 of them this week. Let me just double check on the plug.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
3.
and
So
two are trash. So
yeah, so basically, really just one.
yeah.
McLaurin. Normally, one of the rules I set is exactly one or min one underperforming wide receiver. I don't think that this is the case. Brian, when there's only a handful of unformed wide receivers, are you just going really all in on, in this case, McLaurin, or are you just doing like 20, 30% and just getting some leverage there?
Yeah, I'll just get some leverage on McLaurin, because if you do min one underperform, you'll end up like 50% Mac Collins. So yeah, I'm just playing a ton of Terry this week. I'll mix Mac in when I need a cheap receiver or in those Vegas game stacks.
Exactly, yep. James says, I usually run 140% ownership on ownership. Would you increase it this week?
Yeah, I assume that's like Fantasy Cruncher, Roto Grinders, Labs. A lot of optimizers have a cumulative ownership feature, which we don't find nearly as important as the buckets you put them in, or the what's it called when you multiply the ownership? Jesus Christ,
Products?
the ownership product, right? So yeah, again, it's hard for me to say because I don't personally use it. As far as the cumulative ownership number you should be setting this week, I would be setting custom rules to make sure you have a minimum of X, like 1 to 2 guys under 10%, a maximum of 4 to 5 under 10%. Make sure to have multiple 0% guys. Those are the types of rules I would be setting. I understand everyone uses different optimizers. That's fine. But I would think this week, especially, that cumulative ownership is not nearly as effective of a metric to be judging how chalky or not chalky your lineup should be.
Definitely. And Matt says more WFFC qualifiers on FanDuel. Any high-level FanDuel only thoughts for lineup construction?
Yeah, I honestly it's a lot similar, but the running backs are priced up a little better on FanDuel, right? Let me look here real quick on the model. So FanDuel, you have Jeff Wilson 7,700, Montgomery 7,500, Walker's 8,400. Um, but you have the cheaper guys: P Ryan 66, Pacheco 63, Tave 62, Gibson 61. What's Rashad White? Rashad White is
Uh,
what else? Rashad White.
he is
Rashad White
6,400.
64. So you're playing those guys too. It's kind of similar. It's just a little bit different grouping, and the ownership buckets are a little bit different there. But honestly, I think it's the same thing. Where you can stack up the games that you like, play these cheaper running backs, and then play the underpriced wide receivers outside of your stacks.
Makes
So a
sense
long
to
way
me.
of saying not much difference. Sorry, sorry, Matt.
Dylan says, I think Gasecki breaks the slate, which you know we did recommend Miami stacks. He's 3,500 on DraftKings, only projected to be 5-6% owned. Uh, what do you think about Gasecki?
I'm not playing him. The only time this season he's had more than 4 targets is when Durham Smythe has been out of the lineup. Smythe is in the lineup this week. You look at the last 3 games, he's had 4 targets, 2 targets, 3 targets. So maybe he catches 2 touchdowns. That's not enough to break the slate. I just think that, again, I know we're looking for cheap pieces in Miami. I just don't think you need it this week. And the fact that for whatever reason they hate him in this new offense, and he's just not getting the target volume when these other tight ends are in the game, and they're all in this week. So I'm not saying not to play him because he get the touchdown variance. I'm not playing him because I don't think the volume is going to be there.
Makes sense to me. And cool. So I think that's all the questions here. So let's go ahead and jump to the last thing we usually talk about on the slates. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the wide receiver model, and we're going to take a look at wide receivers that are under 5K and under 10% owned on DraftKings. And we'll go to the main slate. We'll say 5K under 10%. And we're thinking who's going to score a touchdown out of these list of trash plays. And
So it's
Brian, I'll
got to
let
be
you go
Matt
first.
Collins, right? I mean, Matt Collins is the one. I think I said Matt Collins that last week.
Mhm.
His air yards have been surprisingly really good. I think he has 200 plus air yards the last 2 weeks combined. In a game we hope to shoot out, I think Matt Collins is the easy answer. But let's not cheat and lean on underperforming wide receivers. And I will say, uh, I like DJ Moore this week.
Okay.
Sam Darnold back. He should be in the slot mostly and avoiding Patrick Surtain, who's been an incredible cornerback this year. I'll say DJ Moore gets a legitimate. I don't even know if Sam Darnold's a legitimate NFL quarterback, but Jesus Christ. I mean, again, moves. All right, this week we got Sam Darnold, we have Mike White, we have Bryce Perkins, we have Trevor Siemian, we have Kyle Allen, and that's in addition to the other terrible quarterbacks that are already starting this year. So I mean, we are in for an absolute treat on Sunday when it comes to some of these quarterbacks under center.
I've been trying for like 3 years to get my significant other to watch American football, and she's always like, "This is just terrible." And I'm gonna try and get her to watch some games tomorrow, and she's gonna be like, "This is still terrible,"
Well,
because
you
of
got
all
pick.
these
You got
back and
pick.
forth.
You got pick better games.
I know.
Honestly, I thought the Thanksgiving slate was decent.
Yeah, it was. It was. But yeah, so for my pick, I was gonna switch up. Can I say a tight end? Does tight end under 5K and under 10% still work?
Hey, it's our show. We can make the rules, so
I was gonna say, what do you think about Logan Thomas? 1 to
yes.
2% on DraftKings or FanDuel, 3K, super super cheap, very high ranking in the model. He's projected for like 6 or 7 targets. Uh, I kind of a high game, not the highest game total, but I think he can get there.
I'm in. I'm in totally. I think we said it last week in our staff chat. Jake, who's our MMA writer, but he's a big Washington fan. I think he said last week, he's like, "Oh shit, Logan looks back. Let's start to play him." And I agreed. I think he's top 5 in the model. So yeah, man, I'm all on board Logan this week. No one's gonna play him. Everyone's playing Foster Moreau, and I think there's another higher price or higher owned tight end. No, Logan Thomas, dude. Pivot away from the chalky McLaurin or play them together, whatever. I don't care. But like, I agree with the dude. I think it's a great play. Long story short,
Are we stacking the Commanders this week then?
no, we're not doing that. I mean, you could stack the Commanders this week. I'm not stacking it. I'll just play both those guys instead. Yeah, we got them, dude. We got them 2% on both sides.
Yeah,
Come on, man.
definitely. Um, Last question here. BSK says Garrett Wilson is going to break the slate.
Which would be par for the course because he's actually popular and I would, dude, Moose. If assuming things go as planned, the winning GPP score is gonna be like 300 points this week.
100%. It's gonna be a Mike White's mega stack.
Yeah, Mike White, Denzel Mims, Tyler Conklin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking here. Garrett Wilson's projected to be like 25% owned, the
Yeah,
highest
Jesus
owned
Christ, dude.
wide receiver. Is he actually projected to be the third highest wide receiver after Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen?
Yeah, I mean he's just too cheap. Like he's just way too cheap. So.
Yeah, winning salary is going to leave $6,000 left on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, really quick before we get out of here, user 453 says Mike White's favorite target was Elijah Moore. We did not talk about him because is Elijah Moore back?
They got to play him, but we also have to remember there's a lot of context with this stuff too, right? It's like Mike White started 3 games last year. We also have to remember the other receivers that he was competing with were Jamison Crowder, Braxton Berrios, Keelan Cole, right? Like these aren't like of course he threw to Mike, of course he threw to Elijah Moore, of course he threw to the running backs. Now we got Garrett Wilson. Conklin's a much better tight end than what they had last year. The Titans last year have combined for like 5 career catches. So like I understand, and I am very hopeful that he throws to Elijah Moore. But we have to consider the context of some of these. Oh, when this guy played last, this is who he targeted. So I'm with you, dude. I hope Elijah Moore gets targets, but it's probably gonna be the Garrett Wilson show.
Awesome. So, any last lingering thoughts before I take us out of here, Brian?
To recap, there's some good stacks this week. A lot of stacks you don't have to bring it back. So traditionally, which someone did have a question, was I think we skipped over. Adam says when you 3x1, does that 3 mean quarterback plus 3 or quarterback including? So we include the quarterback when we talk about that, Adam. So if we say 3x1, that means quarterback, 2 teammates, and then opposing player. So you don't have to bring it back this week for a majority of the stacks. Just hammer all the value running backs. There's not a need to pay up this week. Just the way I justified it was if there were 1 to 2 cheap running backs, sure, there would be a reason to flip it and play expensive running backs in case those 2 guys fail. We have 6 to 8 cheap running backs this week. It's astronomically impossible for all 8 to fail, and the odds are 2 to 3 of them are going to score 20 plus points, and that's going to be necessary in GPPs. So I would much rather just hammer all of those guys as opposed to playing any guys that are like 7, 8K plus on DraftKings.
Then actually, really quick, since you said that, actual last question to you, Brian. How do you handle those running backs in cash games, low risk contests? You just
I
play
would.
them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You just play the most popular. I don't know. I don't know anything about cash. You just play the most popular ones.
Makes sense to me. Cool. So that'll pretty much do it for tonight's show. Again, I'm Moose alongside with Brian. We'll be back on Tuesday to break down on the $1 Million Mission. Brian's lineups did on Sunday, and then we'll be back at again a week from today, next Saturday, to break down the NFL show. We'll have some products, videos, chats in between. Tomorrow, Chris will be live in the Discord, occupyfantasy.com/Discord, to find out how you can join our Discord server. Check out the pre-lock show there. It's always very, very fun and eventful. And I guess that'll pretty much do it. Rory says P. Ryan or Najee full PPR, Brian.
Najee. So Jalen Warren is out this week. So Najee should get like 100% of the snaps, where P. Ryan has Chris Evans to compete with. So I'll say Najee there, Rory.
Yep, definitely. Cool. So that'll do it for tonight's show. Moose and Brian from Occupy Fantasy. Until next time, have a good night.
See ya.